Hey, everybody, what is going on? Serial Overdrive here. It's Saturday. I've got a coffee, so it's time to talk some you know what. That's right, it's time for STS, episode God Knows What. And I started off with a lie. I'm not drinking coffee. I'm drinking a bit of wine because we've got something to celebrate. This channel is possibly about to get banned for this video, but first, we just hit 15 million views. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody who's tuned into my videos and managed to help me accomplish this goal. It's crazy, like when I started this channel, it was 11 years ago, and my goal was just to help some people tutorials. At the time, if you want to know how much people were making off of YouTube, it was about 1 to 2 cents per 1,000 views. Right now, it's much, much more than that. I'm probably going to do a revenue reveal at some point, but it's much, much more than that. At the time, it wasn't about the money. It was just about helping people, making content for like-minded gamers who are stuck in areas and couldn't figure things out, and doing it as quick and as fast as possible and getting them back into the game. We've kept that ethos going, and somehow we've managed to hit 15 million views. We get stuff like this where people just tune in to listen to me talk, and that's something I really do appreciate. I've got other YouTube channels I'm grinding out that I'm trying to push, and getting 10, 50, 100, or 1,000 views on those channels is monumental. But on Serial Overdrive, getting 1,000 views, that's almost like just another video. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying this to say, like, I really do appreciate the fact that people tune in. I really do appreciate people take the time out of their day to just listen to what I have to say, that they actually enjoy this, that you're willing to give me a chance every single time I put out a video. So thank you for that. But if there's one thing I don't want to do, it's drag out the intro, because we've got to get to the fact that this video might get the channel banned, and we're already about 2 minutes in and you don't know why. So what I'm going to be talking about today is deplatforming, demonetizing, why I think it is actually a horrible idea what YouTube has been doing recently, and just social media in general. So what I'm talking about, there's a whole host of people who've been banned for various reasons, for various things, and a lot of them I think are undeserved. So you take someone like the Act Man, okay? He was demonetized on YouTube. He's been remonetized now, but he was demonetized because basically he made some threats to YouTube employees on Twitter. He did it sarcastically. He was under a lot of stress. There was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes and in front of the scenes for those of you who watched that series of videos. But basically, he said some things that he shouldn't have said, but he said them more in jest and sarcasm than in malice. And it was very obvious, and people got in contact with him. They found out what that was, but he was still demonetized. Then you've got someone like Gideon. Gideon is still on YouTube, thank God. But funny dude, he was on Twitch, and he had a beef with Pokimane. He did some stuff that he probably shouldn't have done, sent some people to her chat. She got a little upset with him, and he ended up banned on Twitch. He doubled down, and he got permabanned. Him and Pokimane are cool now, and it seems like Twitch is insisting that he should still be banned. They have all sorts of other malicious people on their platform, but they're completely banning this guy who's made up with the person who he was banned for harassing. Then you get another person I'm going to bring up, a little bit more controversial, Andrew Tate, otherwise known as the Top G, I guess. I don't know why he calls himself that, because he probably can't find the G spot, but whatever. He was banned off all pretty much known social media platforms. We're talking Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. I think Twitch might have banned him before he even got an account, TikTok, everything. And then you've got other people like Donald Trump who've just been completely wiped off the face of the earth by social media. Now, what I want to outline here is that I think we're going down a slippery slope, and I think we've already gone quite far down that slope. So initially, when it comes to YouTube, because YouTube's sort of what I know best, back in the old days, anything goes on YouTube. You could upload whatever. It was a wild west. People upset about the N-word, they would have been really upset about what was going on YouTube, right? It was wild. Now, obviously, things had to be clamped down, because you can't be showing people getting beheaded on YouTube, or you really shouldn't be showing it anywhere, because kids are there. You don't want your 6-year-old to see. You don't want to see that. You don't want a kid to see that. So fine, they got rid of all those videos. I get it, 100% makes sense. Next up, they start getting rid of people who are actually making threats, people who are posting illegal content, stuff like that. Still, nobody really has a problem with that, because like if you're threatening to kill someone, if you're posting illicit content that shouldn't be posted, stuff like that, okay. Then they start getting rid of or demonetizing gun channels. After that, they start demonetizing channels talking about how to use drugs safely and drugs and just all that stuff. And now they're going into demonetizing and removing people for doing things that they basically just disagree with. Now, the prime example I've got is Andrew Tate. You see, when it comes to Donald Trump, there's a bunch of stuff that went on January 6th. And whether you love him or hate him, I think you could say the stuff that happened on January 6th could be used as an excuse to ban him. However, Andrew Tate is a little bit different. For the best of my knowledge, he hasn't actually incited any riots or any violence or anything like that. He does a lot of long-form content. He said some really misogynistic, very vile things during that content. Those clips have gone viral, gotten him a following. I'm not even sure if he's doubling down on it or not, because anytime I see his content, I have no idea when it's from, right? But basically this stuff keeps going, and now they've completely banned him off the platform because of it. And the problem I have with this is none of the stuff he said is inherently promoting violence or anything like that. He's not going out and saying kill X person, kill X race, kill X gender, do this, do that. He's just sort of saying like stuff that's not good. I'm not going to repeat it because I don't want to get banned or anything like that. But basically, he's gotten a really big platform and he's saying things that probably shouldn't be said. He's passing on ideas as true that aren't true. And so as a result, he got banned off of all of social media. Now, for a lot of people, this doesn't seem like any sort of big issue because they disagree with him. But for me, the issue isn't whether he was right or wrong. It's what he was actually banned for. He's banned for saying his ideas, his opinions. He wasn't saying that a lot of this stuff was fact. He was just giving them as his opinions. And he was banned because those opinions and those ideas disagreed with what YouTube and a lot of current society, TikTok, Instagram, all of that thinks is true. Now, I agree. I think a lot of his stuff is completely vile. It's completely false. It isn't true. But at the same time, when you start banning people from that, we go into a very interesting reality, because what's true for an American is very different than what's true for someone who's living in Russia. And what's true for an American born in the 1990s or the 2000s is very different from what's true of an American born in the 1950s or the 1960s. For instance, when I went to school, I was taught that the Russians took a huge amount of casualties in World War II, and so were sort of responsible for turning the war. They were that shield that sort of held up against the Nazi invasion. They lost millions of people, a whole generation of men, to ensure that the Nazis didn't take Moscow, to ensure that they stopped at their line. And because of that, the Americans, the Europeans, the English were able to come on through, get D-Day, start conquering Germany from behind. And just like all your favorite vids on the hub, they got completely wrecked. They being the Germans in this case. Now, that's what I was taught. If you go back to the 1950s and 1960s, probably the 1970s, in the midst of the Cold War, do you think the Russians had anything to do with World War II? The way that my parents told me, they were basically running scared, and the Americans came in and held both fronts because goddamn, America's great. Now, America is great. They did a really good job with World War II, but I think the Russians had a lot to do with it, and there's a whole generation of missing men that sacrificed themselves to that end. And just because in the end we had some disagreements with the Russians, with the USSR, because both, I don't want to get into the Cold War because there's some, that would be a very long video. But basically what I'm trying to say is there's two very different realities there, and which one is true is very hard to ascertain. In my opinion, my reality is true. The Russians lost a lot of men on the front. They did a lot to hold Nazi Germany back, and because of that, the Americans were able to come and save the day. And the British, of course, they were holding their own too. They had a little island that was just holding out against the Germans. They played a huge part in it. It wasn't just the Americans coming in. It was the fact that we came in so late and were so powerful when we came in. We hadn't been at war for so many years that made it that we could actually swing. That's not the point. That's not the point. I'm getting out. It's STS. We go off the rails here, but that's way off the rails. No, what I'm trying to say, though, is there's a disagreement there, and I think that both sides should be able to voice their opinion without either side getting banned. Now, what's happening is when you have someone who has a different mentality than someone else, it's best for them to clash. It's best for them to talk it out. It's best to see where culture ends up. I think right now with Andrew Tate and a lot of these people, what we're seeing is sort of that counterculture to woke culture. It was people who actually deserved it. You got people like Weinstein, Cosby, all these vile people that it was just people were coming out of the woodworks. People felt empowered to speak out against these people who were in positions of power and tell them what they did was wrong. And that is something that is vital to society. That's how we improve. That's how we get better. But then things started to get a little crazy, right? People were trying to cancel each other for things that didn't really even make sense. You know, it was like someone back in the 1700s had slaves, and all of a sudden everything they did should just be thrown out the window. Slavery is horrible. It's a horrible, horrible thing, but you can't cancel people in the past for what they believed in, because at one time, at some time, we're going to get canceled, right? Like at some time, it's going to be, people are going to be eating meat that's made in a vat. They're going to be eating meat that's, you know, cruelty and harm free. And looking back on meat eaters of today, they're going to say, how could you do that? Do we all want to get canceled for something like that? I don't know. There's probably vegetarians, people in PETA, who would say, yes, we should be. But at the same time, there's people that are saying, well, no, like this is just what we had to do. Like if I don't eat protein, like I've tried being vegetarian. When I didn't eat protein, I got really bad headaches, felt weak. It just, I couldn't get it to work. I couldn't balance my macros. I don't know what I was doing wrong. Maybe I don't have enough money. Maybe I'm not buying the right things, but I couldn't get it to work. So I had to go back to eating meat every now and then. Like I felt like I had to go back. I had headaches. I was going to the doctor. They couldn't like help me out. They were trying different vitamins, all that. I eat meat. I ate the meat because it came, like I was served a meat dish and the waitress said like, hey, I can take this back and we'll just give you something that's vegetarian. I said, well, if you take it back, you're just going to throw it out, right? At that point in my mind, I wasn't killing an animal. I was eating what was put in front of me, and the only other option was for it to be thrown out. So I ate that. All of a sudden, my issues went away. And I was like, okay, I think we've got a problem here now. And then I don't know how else to fix it other than this way. Maybe I'll give it a go again. You know, I've tried a lot of the plant-based foods and substitutes for meat and everything like that. They taste great. They taste right to me. So maybe it'll work out. But my point is, if you go back and start canceling people for all this stuff, there's a lot of blowback that happens. In fact, if you look like one of my heroes, Anthony Bourdain, I think one of the reasons he probably ended up killing himself was because of woke culture, because of cancel culture, and because he was worried about what would happen to him when some of the stuff that had been going on came out. And I think that's what happens with cancel culture, with woke culture at its worst. And I think what happened then is eventually people started to realize some of the stuff that was going on. They started to realize some of the effects it was having and how it was taking out and really harming people who didn't deserve to be harmed. And then you have a bit of a counterculture movement. And I think that's sort of, you know, I think that's what led to people like Donald Trump becoming the president. I think that's what led to Andrew Tate getting all this like stuff. I think that's what led to people hitting Joe Rogan so much. It's just been this like ridiculous thing where it's like push and pull, push and pull. So where am I going with this? What I'm trying to say is I think that some of this is natural and some of this needs to happen. I think if a lot of these people who are in charge of who gets banned and who gets to stay on social media had their way, we would have kept going further and further to that woke culture. And I think eventually everybody would have gotten canceled. There's stuff I've said in the past that I could have been canceled for, I'm sure. Now, it was jokes between friends. It was at the time I was on YouTube still. I was a smaller streamer, a smaller person in general. I mean, I didn't have the money to pay for heat. It was cold out. There's shrinkage. No, but like really, like it was just like I was a smaller channel at the time. Everybody knew where I was coming from. There weren't new people coming in all the time. So when I'd say stuff, they'd know what basis it was from. They'd know what I was referring to. They'd know what I was saying. They had some background on the situation. They had some background on the times and everything like that. So what I was saying didn't come off as harsh as it would now. We're digressing a bit from the situation because that's not quite what's going on right now. So what's going on right now, I think, is there's people that they want to cancel anyone who disagrees with them. And I think that's one of the things that woke culture and things like that are pushing for. You cancel people who are saying things that's bad. Anything that disagrees with you is bad. So people who disagree with you or say something that you don't like or say something that could be a bit mean are getting canceled, even though I don't think that's the world that we want to live in. It would be great if we could all just agree on things. It would be great if the world was perfect, if everything was fair, if life was amazing. We all had $1 million in Ferraris and 10 inches of pipe because everybody knows the water just comes out better then. But no, like that's not the world we live in. There's going to be disagreements, and while they should be civil, they will get heated at times, and we need to allow for that to happen, because if we don't, what happens is these things go on behind closed doors. So with Andrew Tate, he hasn't just disappeared from the internet. He's just taken his followers somewhere else. He's lost a lot of his followers, but the people who are still following him, they're still on YouTube. They're still making videos. That ideology that he's spreading is still being spread. It's just being spread more underground. Let's take someone like Gideon. He can't even be shown on Twitch anymore. So if you want to interact with him, you literally have to turn off your stream. That's a whole audience that doesn't get to interact with him anymore. But the audience that does interact with him, they're no longer interacting with that Twitch audience. Everything he said can't be talked about on Twitch. So if he has a bad take, nobody on Twitch can actually disagree with him, So his bad take goes unquestioned, which makes it seem like it's a good take to the people who heard it. Now, granted, not as many people hear it, but there still are a large amount of people that do hear this stuff. When you take someone like Andrew Tate, let's say, he's been banned off all social media platforms. He still has a following. That following has just gone to a different website. It's a lot smaller, but it's a lot more dedicated. And what they're doing is they're taking his message and they're bringing it to all of these other sites. And because of the way the algorithms work, everybody who sort of agrees with his message or who has been sort of inundated by it, they're being inundated by all these other people who are spreading his message. And these people aren't as responsible. They're not as well known. They're not being questioned because people just don't know about them. It's all happening underground. The algorithm sort of hiding it from all these bigger creators who might be able to articulate what's wrong with these takes, articulate why they're incorrect. But these people are still being inundated. And what you're having is you're having these small groups that are just allowed to branch out and grow and be unquestioned because it's all happening out of sight of the bigger content creators, and the bigger content creators, the more articulate content creators who could actually talk about these issues, aren't talking about it because they're worried they'll get banned for talking about it. So these ideas go unquestioned, and because of that, the people who hear those ideas, they think that they're correct. Also, it just makes it hard for content creators like myself to just bring up any sort of topic. I'm going to give you a few examples of what people have tried to cancel me for. It's all happened it's happened behind the scenes. I've had to talk this out with people and stuff like that. But here, once I said that getting blackout drunk was something that you shouldn't be doing a couple times a week. Someone tried to cancel me because they said that I was shaming alcoholics. In another case, I was reported for propagating Nazi imagery. This was a Call of Duty video game where I was fighting the Nazis. In the video, I legitimately said that Nazis are complete shit, but apparently the person didn't really listen to the video and they were offended because they saw a Nazi flag. I don't think this is the right approach to take, because if we ban all Nazi imagery, if we don't talk about why it was such a bad thing, we're bound to repeat the past. And I think actually that is something that really sort of like reiterates what I feel about this. I feel like if we can't have open conversations about ideas that are horrific, we're going to end up repeating those ideas because people won't understand why they're horrific. They won't understand these things have been tried in the past, that people have done this stuff and that it is not a good thing. And yeah, like, I get it. You want to protect everybody's sensitive ears. You want to live in a fairyland. But you've got to understand the context for how we got there to ensure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past and take that amazing place that we're living in and turn it into a nuclear wasteland. Yeah, to wrap everything up for people who haven't quite followed my train of thought, I think cancel culture and I think this demonetization, this banning, this silencing of creators who say something that a lot of people disagree with is a troubling trend. When one platform does it, I think it's troubling, but I don't think it's anything that horrific. I think those platforms do have the rights to do it. Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, whatever, Instagram, Facebook, they're all private companies. I think that's something they should have the right to do. But I think when they all act at the same time, that sort of constitutes a monopoly. And that monopoly is actively silencing someone. And sure, right now it might be someone that you disagree with, but at some point it might be someone who's speaking out against social media. It might be someone who's telling you why these algorithms are horrific. It might be someone telling you to get off the internet and read a fucking book. You don't know what it's going to be next. And I think that that's a dangerous trend that we're seeing, because businesses generally do not tend to act in the best interest of the person. Those businesses tend to act in the best interest of themselves. And if they can all start to group up, if they can all start to make calls together, if they can all start to deplatform people together, they're likely going to start using that to their advantage. And I think that could actually be very dangerous. Take, for example, let's say a politician gets a lot of money. What if that politician started paying all these social media platforms to ban their adversaries?